Hey guys, tonight we're stepping into a story that you've been breathing your whole life without ever really thinking about it. The air, the invisible ocean that surrounds you right now, filling your lungs every few seconds, keeping you alive. But it wasn't always like this. There was a time when to take a breath here on Earth would have been a death sentence. Poisonous skies, choking clouds, gases so alien and hostile that nothing like us could have survived. And yet, somehow, over billions of years, that deadly shroud was reshaped into the gentle, life-giving blanket of oxygen and nitrogen that makes each breath tonight possible. So, before you get comfortable, take a moment to like the video and subscribe, but only if you genuinely enjoy what I do here. And drop a comment below telling me where you're watching from and what time it is for you right now. I always love to see how far these journeys travel across the world. Now, dim the lights, maybe turn on a fan for that soft background hum, and let's ease into tonight's journey together. You close your eyes and imagine Earth, not as it is today, but as it was in its earliest youth. A newborn planet still glowing with heat, its crust cracked and steaming. Volcanoes erupt endlessly, belching clouds of carbon dioxide, methane, and ammonia. The sky isn't blue. It's a murky red-orange haze thick with toxic gases. If you had stood there, your skin would have burned, your lungs would have collapsed. And yet, even in this inferno, the seeds of the atmosphere we know today were beginning to form. Scientists call this the primordial atmosphere. It wasn't stable and it wasn't kind, but it was the raw material for something greater. Every eruption, every lightning strike in that heavy air, every drop of chemical rain falling into the oceans was like a recipe being written. What could emerge from such chaos? Could this poisoned veil ever become a sky worth breathing? That's the paradox we'll follow tonight. The strange, improbable transformation of the air from poison to breath. Along the way, you'll meet invisible architects, microbes that exhaled oxygen as waste, shaping everything that came after. You'll see Earth nearly die in its own frozen experiments. You'll watch mass extinctions rewrite the balance of gases. And you'll realize that the story of the atmosphere isn't just about air. It's about life itself. Because the truth is, the air you breathe right now has been breathed before. By ferns, by trilobites, by dinosaurs, by your distant ancestors. It is ancient, recycled countless times, carrying memory across eons. And so, as you settle in, take one slow breath. Inhale deep, exhale gently. That rhythm connects you not just to the present moment, but to a history billions of years long. Tonight we'll follow it back to skies of poison, to oceans of change, and finally to the blue vault overhead that makes this planet home. You can picture it now. The newborn oceans steaming under skies of poison. Lightning cracks across the clouds, white-hot veins tearing through a blood-red sky. Every bolt releases raw energy, splitting molecules apart, recombining them into strange new compounds, ammonia, methane, hydrogen cyanide. For us they'd be lethal, but for Earth they were building blocks. Down in the shallow seas, something remarkable stirs. Imagine molecules drifting and colliding, sticking together in tiny chains. They're fragile but persistent, the first whispers of chemistry that might someday become life. And as these chemical experiments play out for millions of years, they leave subtle imprints on the atmosphere. The balance of gases shifts, ever so slightly, like a canvas slowly primed for an unseen masterpiece. The young Earth's air wasn't stable, it was always in flux. Gigantic asteroid impacts could vaporize oceans, filling the skies with steam and dust. Then, in time, the atmosphere would cool, rain would fall, and oceans would form again. Over and over, Earth's skies were destroyed and remade, until finally they settled into a steady rhythm. Volcanic outgassing kept pumping carbon dioxide, nitrogen, and water vapor into the air. These weren't friendly gases, but they were consistent, and consistency was the foundation life needed. Think of it this way. Earth's first atmosphere was like a stage being built. The lights too hot, the air unbreathable, but the structure was slowly taking shape. And behind the curtain, in the quiet pools of the ocean, unseen players were getting ready to step out for the first time. Here's the part that's hardest to grasp. If you were to stand there 4 billion years ago and look up, you wouldn't see blue. You'd see a haze of orange and grey, like the skies of Saturn's moon Titan. The sun itself would be faint and weak, filtered through toxic smog. That view, deadly and alien, was the cradle of a life. And just when it seemed nothing good could come of such chaos, the miracle happened. Tiny, microscopic pioneers, bacteria capable of harnessing sunlight, emerged. They didn't just survive the hostile air, they began to change it. They breathed out a gas we now cannot live without: oxygen. At first it was poison to everything else alive, but slowly, imperceptibly, it built up in the atmosphere. With it came the greatest transformation Earth had ever seen. Tonight, that's the story we'll follow, from skies that would have suffocated you instantly, to skies that cradle you now with every breath. From poison to breath, from death to life. So settle deeper, you're safe. And as you breathe gently, remember, this same invisible ocean of air has been through worlds you'd barely recognize, shaped by fire, water, stone, and the tiniest of living things. This is the history of Earth's atmosphere. Close your eyes and imagine a world fresh from the forge. Earth has just been born from cosmic dust and fire, a molten sphere wrapped in a shimmering cocoon of gases. That very first atmosphere, if you can call it that, was fleeting, fragile, and utterly alien. It wasn't the air you know today. It was mostly hydrogen and helium, the two lightest elements in the universe. These gases are abundant in stars and in the great clouds of matter from which planets form. But on Earth, they were like guests at the wrong party. The young planet's gravity wasn't strong enough to hold them tightly. Every solar flare, every gust of charged particles from the sun stripped them away into space. Within just a few million years, an instant in geologic time, our world lost its first breath. Picture it. Earth, glowing red-hot, crisscrossed by rivers of magma, with geysers of gas escaping in plumes that vanish into the blackness of space. No blue sky, no clouds, just an endless expanse of vacuum, swallowing the planet's first exhalations. And yet, those vanished gases left a mark. Hydrogen and helium may not have stayed, but they primed the stage for heavier, more stubborn gases to arrive. Soon, asteroids and comets slammed into the surface, delivering water vapor, ammonia, and methane. Volcanic eruptions burst through the crust, releasing carbon dioxide and nitrogen. A second atmosphere was being stitched together, patch by patch, molecule by molecule. But in this earliest chapter, the air was still no friend to life. It was suffocating, corrosive, unstable. If you had been standing on that raw earth, you wouldn't survive a second. Your lungs would burn, your eyes would dissolve in the acidic haze, and yet, paradoxically, this poisonous blend was the recipe for everything that would come later. Think of it like a kitchen, one you'd never want to enter. The stovetop is volcanoes, blasting out sulfur and steam. The pots are vast oceans of lava, bubbling with minerals, and the ingredients are raw molecules swirling in the air, ready to collide, to fuse, to create strange new compounds. Dangerous, yes, but also creative. This first atmosphere wasn't meant to last. It was a draft version, an opening sketch, erased by solar winds and impacts, rewritten by fire and stone. And every time the sky was stripped away, Earth began again, layering on a thicker, more complex cloak of gases. That cycle, loss and renewal, wasn't chaos, it was rehearsal. And rehearsals, as you'll see, are what prepare the stage for the show of life. The Earth, now cooled just enough to grow a rocky crust, begins to exhale again. This time the gases are heavier, thicker, harder for space to steal away. Volcanic eruptions roar from every crack in the planet's skin, filling the sky with carbon dioxide, nitrogen, ammonia, methane and sulfur. The air is heavy, dense and acrid. If you had stood here, the landscape would feel like hell on Earth. Oceans of lava simmering, black skies choked with volcanic ash, the air reeking of sulfur and acrid smoke. Lightning storms crackle constantly, fueled by charged particles dancing in the dense atmosphere. Raindrops of acid hiss against the rocks, carving grooves into their molten faces. But beneath the chaos, something remarkable is happening. Every molecule in that foul mix is a building block waiting to combine. Methane and ammonia swirl with carbon dioxide and water vapor, catalyzed by energy from lightning strikes and solar radiation. In tiny pockets, shallow pools or mineral-rich shorelines, chemical reactions begin to stir. Scientists believe it was within this poisonous sky and steaming waters that the ingredients of life first brewed. Simple molecules formed chains. Chains folded into complex shapes. Some of those shapes began to copy themselves. Crude, clumsy beginnings. Yes, but beginnings nonetheless. The second atmosphere may have been suffocating to you and me, but it was an incubator for the earliest chemistry of life. Without this deadly shroud, there might never have been cells, no evolution, no creatures swimming, crawling, walking, or dreaming beneath the sky. Still, danger was everywhere. Imagine Earth as a sealed cauldron under pressure, gases trapped, oceans beginning to form from condensed steam, and every storm feeding energy into this violent system. To live here would be impossible. To thrive here, if you were a molecule with potential, was destiny. And so, Earth wore this toxic cloak for hundreds of millions of years. The air was red with haze, the oceans dark and acidic. No birds, no trees, no fish. Just a world preparing for what would come next. Because slowly, through trial and error, tiny organisms began to take hold in this deadly ocean, feeding on the very gases that choke the skies. They would eventually change everything. But that is a story for the next chapter, the atmosphere's greatest transformation and life's boldest experiment. Picture Earth around 2.5 billion years ago. The skies are still red and heavy with haze, the oceans greenish-black with dissolved iron, and life is nothing more than microbial mats carpeting shallow seas. No trees, no animals, not even algae as we know them, just simple cells, working quietly in the darkness of chemistry. But then, something extraordinary evolves. Tiny organisms called cyanobacteria, small, almost invisible, discover how to capture sunlight and split water molecules. In doing so, they release a byproduct, oxygen. It seems harmless, just bubbles drifting upward into the heavy air. But in that moment, Earth's fate is forever changed. At first, the oxygen doesn't linger. It binds immediately with the iron dissolved in the seas, staining the ocean floor with rusty red layers of iron oxide. These banded iron formations, still visible today in ancient rocks, are silent witnesses to the first breaths of oxygen on Earth. The seas slowly turn from green to reddish-brown, as though the planet itself is rusting from the inside out. Then, when the iron is finally saturated, oxygen escapes into the atmosphere. For the first time in billions of years, the air begins to change. What was once poisonous methane haze starts to clear, giving way to skies that, millions of years later, would turn blue. But in the short term, this change is catastrophic. For the life forms that had thrived in oxygen-free waters, this new gas is deadly. To them, oxygen is a toxin. It corrodes cell walls, disrupts metabolism, and kills entire microbial communities. Imagine the world's first pollution crisis. An atmosphere filling with a substance so alien, it wipes out countless organisms. This mass extinction, triggered not by asteroids or volcanoes but by microscopic innovators, is one of the most profound turning points in Earth's history. And yet, oxygen is also a gift. Without it, complex life could never have evolved. The breath in your lungs right now traces its lineage back to those cyanobacteria, tirelessly releasing oxygen into a hostile world. The irony is stark. What poisoned the Earth was also what prepared it for everything to come: plants, animals, and eventually you. As oxygen begins to seep into the atmosphere, the world enters a new and dangerous chapter. What was once a hazy greenhouse wrapped in methane and carbon dioxide is suddenly destabilized. Methane, which had kept the planet warm, reacts violently with oxygen, breaking down into carbon dioxide and water. The result? Earth cools rapidly. This cooling spirals into what many scientists call snowball Earth. Imagine glaciers crawling outward from the poles, oceans freezing from the surface down, and continents shrouded beneath sheets of ice thousands of feet thick. From space, our planet would have looked like a glittering white marble, reflecting sunlight back into space and locking itself into a deep freeze. Life hangs on at the edges, near volcanic vents at the bottom of the sea, where warmth and nutrients still bubble up. Here, extremophils adapt and endure, proving once again that life is stubborn, resourceful, and unwilling to vanish completely. Meanwhile, the atmosphere above is being remade. Oxygen molecules accumulate, colliding high in the sky under the pressure of sunlight. Slowly they form a protective ozone layer, a shield against lethal ultraviolet rays from the sun. Without this invisible barrier, future life could never safely walk on land. The Great Oxidation Event, then, is a paradox. It is both a catastrophe and a salvation. It kills off much of the simple microbial life that dominated Earth, but it also sets the stage for complexity. It clears the skies, reshapes the climate, and for the first time creates a breathable atmosphere. When you look up at the blue sky tomorrow, remember this: it is not an accident. That colour, that shield, that oxygen, it all began with ancient bacteria rusting the seas and plunging Earth into ice. Out of mass extinction came the possibility of you breathing here, now. The Earth is no longer the same world it was. With oxygen in place, a new evolutionary experiment can begin, one that will eventually lead to plants, animals, and all the wild dramas of life. But it is a reminder of how fragile everything is. Survival often means transformation, and sometimes the very thing that saves life destroys it too. Now that oxygen lingers in the skies, the stage is set for something extraordinary. For billions of years, life has been simple. Tiny single cells drifting in the oceans, clinging to vents, riding currents. But oxygen changes the rules. Suddenly, cells have access to a fuel far more powerful than anything they had before. With oxygen, the chemistry of metabolism becomes turbocharged. Instead of a trickle of energy, cells can release a flood. This surge allows some organisms to grow bigger, build more complex structures, and eventually band together in colonies. For the first time in Earth's history, the possibility of multicellular life flickers into existence. But oxygen is not just a gift, it is also a weapon. To some microbes, this new gas is poison, corroding their fragile chemistry. Many are driven to extinction, retreating into oxygen-free corners of the Earth where they still survive today, deep underground or inside the stomachs of animals. For others, though, oxygen becomes the spark that drives evolution forward. Fire, too, enters the story here. Before oxygen, flames could not exist in the open air, but now lightning can strike a forest and set it ablaze, reducing everything to ash. Flames consume, but they also clear, reset, and renew. In time, fire will become part of the balance of ecosystems. Predation emerges next. With more energy available, some organisms evolve the ability to hunt and consume others. Tiny predators chase tiny prey, sparking the first arms race of life. Shells appear, defenses rise, strategies evolve. The Earth is no longer just a calm ocean of drifting microbes. It is becoming a battlefield of innovation. And above it all, the skies shift from a murky orange haze to a clearer blue, the sign of oxygen reshaping the very face of the planet. The world begins to resemble, faintly, the one you know today. You imagine drifting in those ancient seas, watching as life discovers a new way to breathe. At first, it seems fragile, tiny cells experimenting with this volatile gas. Some flourish, glowing faintly with the energy coursing through them, while others retreat into the shadows of oxygen-free niches, where they will linger as reminders of an older, quieter Earth. This shift reshapes everything. With oxygen in the water, minerals react differently, changing the chemistry of the oceans. Iron, once free-floating, rusts and settles to the seafloor, leaving behind vast bands of red stone, silent markers of a planetary transformation. Whole mountain ranges of iron ore mined by humans billions of years later are the literal fossilized breath of microbes. The rise of oxygen also lays the foundation for vision, muscle, and nervous systems. Complex creatures need abundant energy, and oxygen supplies it. Without this step, there would be no predators, no forests, no humans. Every heartbeat in your chest today is, in some small way, a legacy of that ancient oxygen bloom. Yet balance is delicate. Oxygen levels rise and fall over time, sometimes so high that insects grow to impossible sizes. Dragonflies with wingspans of 2 feet once buzzed through swampy forests. At other times, oxygen dips, shrinking life back down. The atmosphere, it seems, is not a steady backdrop but an ever-shifting stage, and through all of this the skies turn steadily bluer, the horizon clearer. You can almost see the first hints of clouds that resemble the ones you know today, floating over landscapes that are still alien but slowly becoming familiar. It is here, in this fragile equilibrium, that the story of complexity begins in earnest. The world has moved beyond mere survival. Now it experiments with shape, size, and interaction. Close your eyes and step onto a shoreline about 400 million years ago. The world smells different, raw, damp, heavy with the scent of wet stone and primitive mosses. The air is thicker now, swollen with oxygen. What once was an alien haze is turning into something you would almost recognize as breathable. Forests begin to rise. At first, they are not the forest you know. No oaks, no pines. Instead, towering ferns, horsetails, and strange spore-bearing trees thrust upward, their trunks ribbed and hollow, reaching 30 meters high. Beneath them, the ground is a living mat of green, carpeted with mosses and primitive plants, soaking in the sunlight and exhaling oxygen into the sky. With this surge of photosynthesis, the atmosphere transforms. Oxygen climbs to levels higher than at almost any other time in Earth's history. The effect is dramatic. Insects, creatures that breathe through tiny tubes in their bodies, begin to grow to sizes that defy your imagination. Dragonflies with wingspans as wide as a seagull's wheel through the humid air. Millipedes longer than a car coil through the undergrowth, armoured like tanks. It is a strange, lush world, and you can feel how alive it is. Every breath carries the tang of damp vegetation and the richness of oxygen. Fires, too, become more frequent. With so much oxygen, a single spark can ignite forests that roar like furnaces, reshaping landscapes in hours. This balance of abundance and destruction defines the Carboniferous period. It is a time when the Earth experiments with scale, plants and insects pushing the limits of oxygen-fueled growth. And yet, this oxygen-rich paradise is not stable. The balance teeters. With each fallen tree and buried swamp, carbon is locked underground, setting the stage for massive shifts in the planet's climate. The very forests that make the air so rich are also weaving the seeds of future change. Here, in the dappled shadows of ancient forests, you sense that Earth is preparing for its next great transformation. But abundance always carries a hidden cost. As the great forests of the Carboniferous spread across swamps and lowlands, their roots sinking deep into soggy soils, something remarkable begins to happen. When these towering plants die, their bodies fall into waterlogged ground. Instead of rotting away, the plant matter piles up, layer upon layer, compressed under its own weight. Over millions of years, these forests become entombed, transformed into seams of coal that future humans will one day ignite to power entire civilizations. Imagine that. The oxygen you breathe today, in part, is a gift from those ancient forests, an inheritance written into the very chemistry of the air. And the coal we burn in factories and furnaces, it is the shadow of their bodies, a time capsule of Carboniferous sunlight trapped underground. Yet the very act of locking so much carbon beneath the surface has consequences. By stripping carbon dioxide from the air and burying it in coal beds, Earth begins to tilt the balance of its atmosphere. The climate cools. Glaciers advance across southern continents, reshaping the global environment. The lush, oxygen-rich paradise trembles under the weight of its own success. The forests themselves suffer. As swamps dry out and climates shift, the great fern trees and giant horsetails begin to vanish. The insects that once grew to monstrous size dwindle. Dragonflies shrink. The atmosphere, once bursting with oxygen, starts to lean back toward balance. It is here you sense the rhythm of Earth's story. Expansion, collapse, renewal. Oxygen swells, creatures rise to impossible scales, and then the pendulum swings. Each age is a breath, an inhale of abundance, an exhale of extinction. From this collapse, a new order will emerge. Dinosaurs are still far in the future, but the stage is being prepared. Deep in the coal beds, buried carbon waits, a ticking engine that humans will one day unleash, unknowingly rewriting the atmosphere once again. As the Carboniferous forests vanish, the Earth is not poorer, only changed. Life does not end. It pivots, adapts, tries again. You're walking through the closing of one act, knowing another curtain is already rising. Step now into the Mesozoic, an age painted in green jungles, steaming swamps, and skies dominated by creatures so strange they feel like dreams made flesh. This is the time of reptiles, first in small forms scuttling beneath ferns, then in titans whose names echo across human memory: Stegosaurus, Brontosaurus, Tyrannosaurus. But behind their grandeur lies another story, the quiet, invisible shifts in air that allowed them to rise. As the coal beds of the Carboniferous locked away vast amounts of carbon dioxide, the planet cooled, yes, but it also reset its atmospheric balance. Over millions of years, volcanic eruptions began to undo the burial, belching gases into the sky, replenishing what had been lost. The Earth is never static. Its lungs breathe in forests, breathe out fire, and the chemistry of the air follows. By the dawn of the Triassic period, oxygen had dropped from the lofty highs of the Carboniferous. No longer could dragonflies stretch their wings wider than a hawk. Instead, life leaned toward endurance. Reptiles thrived in the thinner air, their scaly skins keeping water locked inside, their metabolism steady even in dry heat. In a sense, they were perfectly tailored to an atmosphere that was harsher, less forgiving, but still sustaining. Think of the dinosaurs not just as monsters of bone and tooth, but as living responses to the air itself. In times of lower oxygen, animals tend to grow larger lungs, more efficient blood, slower but steadier systems. Dinosaurs, colossal, lumbering, yet enduring for 165 million years, were walking testaments to that adaptation. Meanwhile, plants responded as well. Cycads, conifers, and eventually flowering plants flourished in the rebalanced air. Each leaf was an alchemist, drawing in carbon dioxide, pushing out oxygen, weaving sunlight into sugars. With every breath of a dinosaur, with every rustle of a fern, the atmosphere was being rewritten. Pause for a moment. Imagine standing in a Jurassic Valley, a world where oxygen hovers lower than today, but life nonetheless sprawls across every inch. Sauropods lumber past, their long necks swaying like cranes above forests. Pterosaurs skim overhead, wings catching thermals. The air smells of resin, damp soil, volcanic ash. It is not your world, but it is breathable, livable, balanced in its own alien way. This is the secret heartbeat of Earth's story. The atmosphere does not simply cradle life, it shapes it, dictates its forms, whispers its boundaries. Dinosaurs did not just rule by chance. They ruled because the air itself had chosen them. As the Mesozoic marched onward, the atmosphere shifted again. By the mid-Cretaceous, oxygen levels began to rise, climbing close to or even above modern values. This was a breath of opportunity, literally, for new life forms. In the hush of forests, delicate green experiments began to bloom, flowering plants. They were not just a burst of colour in a reptilian world, but an atmospheric revolution. Flowers altered the pace of oxygen exchange. Their efficient leaves, quick-growing and adaptable, pulled in carbon dioxide and exhaled oxygen at a rate unmatched by the older conifers and cycads. With them came pollinators, bees, beetles, birds, and the atmosphere hummed not only with gases but with motion. A feedback loop began. More plants, more oxygen, more creatures that could thrive on high energy and higher metabolism. Dinosaurs, once masters of the low-oxygen Triassic, adapted too. Some grew faster, some smaller and quicker, their warm-bloodedness debated even today. But the rise in oxygen favoured new strategies: speed, flight, bursts of energy. Insects reached remarkable diversity, and mammals, those tiny shadow dwellers, began refining their warm-blooded metabolisms in the enriched air. Quietly, the stage was being reset. But oxygen is never a gift without risk. High levels made the atmosphere more flammable. Lightning strikes ignited wildfires that swept across forests, burning swathes of land, recycling carbon back into the air. It was as if the Earth itself practiced destruction as part of its balance, never letting abundance grow without check. Then came the reminder of cosmic fragility, the asteroid. 65 million years ago, a rock 6 miles wide struck what is now the Yucatan Peninsula. The blast hurled soot, sulfur and rock dust skyward, choking the atmosphere. Sunlight vanished. Photosynthesis stalled. Oxygen production plummeted. The great lords of the Mesozoic, the towering sauropods, the fierce tyrannosaurs, the armored ankylosaurs, all gasped their last in a world that turned cold and dark. The atmosphere itself betrayed them, shifting overnight from breathable to poisonous, from sustaining to suffocating. And yet, in burrows, in water, in seeds and spores, smaller survivors endured. Mammals, adaptable and quick-breeding, inherited the breathing space left behind. Birds, The feathered heirs of dinosaurs kept the skies alive. Insects continued their ceaseless labour. Life did not vanish. It shifted once again to match the air it was given. So, the age of reptiles closed not only in fire and impact, but in the invisible collapse of the very gases that had sustained them for eons. The dinosaurs had been chosen once by the atmosphere, and just as swiftly they were dismissed. The stage now belonged to creatures who could thrive on instability, who could live in burrows, who could withstand scarcity. And from this crucible would emerge us, the oxygen-hungry storytellers of the present day. The asteroid's fire faded, and in its ashes a new chapter began. The Cenozoic dawned not with thunder lizards, but with small, fur-covered creatures peeking out of their burrows. The air, though unsettled, was theirs to inherit. Oxygen levels climbed again, close to the levels you breathe now. It was a gift to warm-blooded beings who demanded constant fuel. Mammals, hungry and restless, filled the silence left by dinosaurs. Their metabolisms thrived in a richer atmosphere, allowing them to grow larger, run farther, and explore new worlds. Birds too, descendants of the vanished giants, found their wings powered by the same invisible currents. Forests thickened across continents, their green canopies breathing life into the sky. Rainforests in South America, Africa, and Asia became engines of oxygen, their photosynthetic machinery cycling carbon and creating the air that allowed mammals to expand. Each tree, each fern, each patch of moss was part of a planetary lung. Yet the Earth's atmosphere was not done shifting its moods. As the Cenozoic unfolded, climate swung wildly. Ice advanced and retreated in great rhythms. With each glaciation, oxygen levels adjusted, animals adapted, and landscapes transformed. Woolly mammoths, giant ground sloths, and saber-toothed cats roamed beneath skies that carried more oxygen than their ancestors ever knew. But oxygen was only part of the story, for as carbon dioxide levels fell, drawn down by rock weathering, by plant growth, by oceans swallowing vast amounts, the Earth cooled. Ice crept from the poles, glaciers carving valleys, freezing seas. Humans would be born into this ice-sculpted world, a world balanced precariously between warmth and freeze. The atmosphere now resembled the one you breathe tonight, about 21% oxygen, a balance perfected for warm-blooded creatures who needed much and gave much back. But it was never a permanent promise. The air is a living system, shifting, cycling, reminding every species that survival is not only about strength or size, but about adapting to the breath of the planet itself. And humans, those latecomers, would build civilizations not only under the sun, but beneath this fragile veil of gases, taking for granted that air is always there, forgetting it has a history, and perhaps a future that may yet turn against us. As the great ice ages rolled back and forth, carving valleys, raising seas, lowering them again, something remarkable stirred in the air. The balance of gases, oxygen steady, carbon dioxide ebbing, created a stage just right for a new kind of creature. You. Humans arrived late in the atmospheric story, but you stepped into it with a kind of audacity no other animal had dared. You learned fire which turned wood into warmth and smoke, the first whisper of humanity's hand altering the sky. You learned to farm, and your ploughed fields breathed differently than untouched forests. The balance shifted slowly at first, almost imperceptibly. For hundreds of thousands of years, your ancestors walked beneath skies that felt eternal. But with each spark of invention, each field cleared, each city built, the atmosphere bent to human will, you began adding carbon back into the air, carbon that ancient plants had trapped and buried. At first, it was the smoke of hearths. Later, it was coal furnaces, oil lamps, the quiet hiss of natural gas. Each flame was a fragment of Earth's history set free, each plume a line in the sky's evolving script. The air grew warmer, heavier with invisible greenhouse gases. Ice that had sculpted continents began to retreat faster. Oceans rose, storms thickened. What had once been cycles of millions of years began to accelerate in mere centuries. The atmosphere, once only shaped by volcanoes, asteroids, and continental drift, was now responding to you. But here's the paradox. You are not apart from the atmosphere. You breathe it in with every sigh. You exhale into it with every laugh. Your heartbeat depends on oxygen carried into your blood, oxygen that trees and algae made for you. To harm the air is to harm yourself. And yet, even as the warning signs grow louder, life persists. Forests still stand. Oceans still move. The air, though stressed, still sustains. Think of it like a mirror. The atmosphere reflects not just the state of the Earth, but the state of humanity. It is fragile, shifting, resilient, and alive. And as you lie here tonight, listening, breathing, you're part of this grand experiment. The air inside your lungs is ancient, recycled through countless creatures before you. Some of those molecules once filled the chest of a mammoth, or swirled above a Triassic swamp, or drifted through the gills of a trilobite. So when you breathe history, and when you exhale, you write the next line in the story of Earth's sky. The story of Earth's atmosphere is not only about the past, it is also a tale of what lies ahead. For even as you breathe easily tonight, the sky above is already changing in ways that will shape the distant tomorrow. Imagine Earth's air as a great invisible fabric. It is stretched thin, just a veil compared to the vastness of space. And yet that veil shields everything you know. It is thick enough to block deadly rays, dense enough to keep warmth from drifting away, and fragile enough that small shifts ripple through the entire system. Right now, you live in an age when carbon dioxide is climbing faster than at any time in the last 800,000 years. Ice cores drilled from Antarctica tell us this. Tiny bubbles of ancient air trapped for millennia whisper their secrets. In the past, carbon levels rose and fell slowly, but today they leap within decades. These numbers are not just data points, they are signs that the breath of the planet is quickening. But the atmosphere has always changed. It has frozen the Earth into snowball states, then thawed it again into greenhouses. It has drowned forests beneath oxygen too rich for survival, then stripped that oxygen back until only the strongest endured. The difference now is speed. Human activity compresses what once took millennia into centuries. Still, resilience remains. Clouds continue to drift. Storms gather and dissolve. Winds carry pollen across continents, dust across oceans, seeds across time. Life adapts. Even as ice shrinks, plants shift ranges, insects adjust, birds follow new paths. It is not perfection, but persistence. Think of the paradox. Air is weightless to you, yet it has mass enough to press upon every square inch of your skin with 14 pounds of force. You are cradled in this pressure. Without it, water would boil away from your body at room temperature. You would not survive a single breath, and yet you rarely notice it. The most vital thing in your life is also the quietest. Scientists peer forward, running models that stretch millions of years. They see possibilities that range from warming seas and shifting storms to the eventual stripping away of the atmosphere itself by the brightening sun. One day, perhaps 1 billion years from now, Earth may return to its earlier state, a planet without breathable air, a surface barren beneath a sky of choking gas. But tonight is not that night. Tonight the air is still here, rushing into your lungs, carrying oxygen through your blood. It hums with the same energy that sustained trilobites, dinosaurs, mammoths, and now you. And so, as you close your eyes, let yourself remember this. The sky is not permanent, but it is present. It is your companion for every breath, every dream, every tomorrow that humanity still has. The long arc of Earth's atmosphere has always been written in cycles, expansion and collapse, enrichment and depletion. Yet the final chapters, though distant, can already be sketched from what we know of stars like our Sun. 1 billion years from now, as the Sun grows hotter, the balance tips. The oceans, your constant companions, begin to shrink. Each drop that rises into the sky carries hydrogen upward. Ultraviolet light splits it, and the hydrogen floats away into space. Slowly, invisibly, the water that cradled life vanishes into the void. Without oceans, weather itself falters, the rains end. The cycle of evaporation and condensation, so ordinary today, grinds to silence. Plants, which now knit oxygen into the air, will falter first. As carbon dioxide dwindles, most greenery suffocates. Forests wither, meadows brown. The atmosphere becomes thin, stripped of its breath. For any creatures still clinging to survival, the very act of breathing will become a challenge too great. Scientists have traced this future not from imagination alone, but from a neighbour, Venus. Once it may have had oceans, even clouds like ours, but now it is a furnace cloaked in carbon dioxide, a cautionary vision of what a runaway greenhouse can do. To peer at Venus is to glimpse what Earth might become, a reminder that habitability is fragile, and yet, within that fragility lies resilience. Extremophils, tiny microbes, may be the last to endure. They already thrive in salt flats, boiling springs, and polar ice. Perhaps they will persist in hidden pockets of Earth, sealed away beneath stone or within briny crusts, eking out the last chapters of life while the sky burns above them. Imagine standing on that far future Earth. The sky is red, thick with haze. The sun looms larger, closer, a swollen giant glowing at the horizon. The air is thin, sharp, almost unbreathable. Silence stretches across the land, and yet, somewhere in a hidden crevice, a colony of microbes still turns the faint trickle of chemistry into life. Even then, Earth whispers, "I endure." For now, though, the atmosphere remains your ally. It shields you, feeds you, holds you. Every breath you take is a reminder of billions of years of balance. Poison turned to oxygen, chaos turned to stability. The lesson of the sky is simple. Nothing lasts forever, but everything matters in its time. Tonight, as you lie here breathing, remember that. The fragile air above you has carried countless lives before yours, and it will carry countless more, until one day it doesn't. That is the paradox of the atmosphere. It is both fleeting and eternal, fragile and powerful, invisible and essential, and you, for this moment, are part of it. You've heard the phrase that the atmosphere is a shield, a cradle, a fragile veil, but it is also a knife edge. Time and again, Earth's sky has swung between gift and curse, shaping not just how life grows, but how it dies. Every great extinction in Earth's history has been tied in some way to the atmosphere. Sometimes it was poisoned, sometimes stripped, sometimes suffocated. The air above has been both executioner and saviour. Take the great oxidation event over 2 billion years ago. It began as life's triumph, the rise of cyanobacteria, tiny architects of oxygen. Yet oxygen, for much of early life, was a poison. As it spread through the seas and into the sky, entire microbial empires collapsed. To breathe, as you do now, was impossible then. For them, oxygen was the apocalypse. Hundreds of millions of years later came another catastrophe, the Permian extinction. The culprit was fire from within the Earth. Vast volcanic eruptions in Siberia poured not just lava, but gases into the air. Carbon dioxide in choking volumes, methane in lethal bursts. The atmosphere became a greenhouse furnace. Oceans warmed, lost their oxygen, and turned toxic. 90% of life was erased. The sky was the weapon. Then, 66 million years ago, the sky became a hammer. An asteroid plummeted through the atmosphere, the friction igniting it brighter than the sun, and when it struck, it lofted dust and sulfur into the stratosphere. The atmosphere darkened. For a year, perhaps longer, the sun's warmth was veiled. Plants starved, animals starved, and the age of the dinosaurs ended. Each time the air was not passive, it magnified destruction. Poison carried further by wind, ash spread across continents, heat trapped beneath invisible gases. The atmosphere, so delicate when calm, becomes merciless when disturbed. And yet, even in these darkest chapters, it was also the midwife of survival. After the Permian, oxygen levels slowly rose again, giving animals the breath to grow larger, stronger. After the asteroid, the air cleared, and forests regrew. The very sky that brought endings also seeded beginnings. So, as you lie here now, inhaling calmly, you are part of that rhythm. Every breath you take carries echoes of extinctions past. The oxygen forged in cyanobacteria blooms, the carbon once belched from ancient volcanoes, the nitrogen recycled from the bones of creatures long gone. To breathe is to inherit. The atmosphere has ended worlds, but it has also given them back. You lie beneath the sky tonight, its quiet dome stretching overhead. To you, it feels eternal, but the truth is the atmosphere is restless, always shifting, and in its restlessness lies both danger and hope. For humanity, the atmosphere is not just background, it is destiny. Carbon dioxide, invisible but powerful, now swells within it, We've tipped the balance, trapping heat like glass over a greenhouse. The air that once saved mammals after the dinosaurs now tests our own survival. Rising seas, stronger storms, collapsing ice shelves, each is an echo of ancient disasters, amplified by what we've set in motion. And still, the atmosphere is mercurial. Some scientists warn that methane, long locked away in frozen soils, could be released in great belches as the Arctic warms. A sudden surge could transform the air in decades, not millennia, heating the Earth beyond anything civilizations have known. Others fear that aerosol pollution, while cooling the planet in small measure, hides the true strength of warming beneath it. Clean the skies too quickly, and the fever spikes. But there are possibilities too. Our atmosphere has been rewritten before, reshaped by life. Tiny microbes painted it with oxygen billions of years ago. Could we too, as a species, paint it again, this time by design? From bold geoengineering schemes that scatter reflective particles in the stratosphere, to technologies that capture carbon and bury it deep underground, we're beginning to test whether we can bend the atmosphere's course. The question is whether we act in time. Beneath these looming threats, the atmosphere still breathes in rhythm. Forests draw down carbon, oceans absorb heat, winds shift and redistribute. Each breath you take tonight is part of that living system, ancient, fragile, and utterly connected to you. The truth is sobering. The atmosphere has ended worlds before. But unlike trilobites or dinosaurs, you are aware of the danger. You can measure it, name it, debate it. That knowledge is not a guarantee of survival, but it is a chance. So as you close your eyes, imagine not only the disasters of the past, but the choices of the present. The air you breathe is both inheritance and responsibility. Humanity's test is not just whether we can endure the atmosphere's moods, but whether we can learn to care for it, to guard it, to pass it on. Because if the sky has taught us anything, it is this: endings come swiftly when the balance is broken. But beginnings always emerge when the balance is restored. Close your eyes and imagine the air not just as something you breathe, but as a sculptor. For billions of years, the atmosphere has shaped not only the surface of the Earth, but the very forms of life that walk, swim, and fly across it. Take the Carboniferous period, some 300 million years ago. The air then was thick with oxygen, over 30% compared to the 21% you breathe tonight. That extra oxygen didn't just fuel fires more fiercely, it fueled bodies. Insects, usually so small and fragile, swelled to sizes that would terrify you today. Dragonflies with wingspans the length of an eagle's soared through dense forests of towering ferns. Millipedes grew longer than a human. Each breath of that rich air gave creatures permission to grow larger, stranger, more daring. The atmosphere was their ally, their invisible ladder to gigantism. But the sculptor's hand is fickle. Oxygen levels fell and the giants dwindled. Only smaller insects could survive in the thinner air. With every shift in atmospheric chemistry, some creatures thrived while others faded. That pattern continues across all of Earth's story. Fast forward to the Mesozoic when dinosaurs reigned. Carbon dioxide was higher, warming the planet and feeding lush vegetation. It gave the great sauropods their endless food supply, forests stretching endlessly, fueled by CO2 in the air. Without that greenhouse effect, the dinosaurs might never have reached such colossal sizes. The atmosphere fed their world, and in turn their footsteps reshaped the Earth. Later, in the Ice Ages, thinner air and shifting currents brought hardship. Mammals evolved ways to conserve heat, lungs better suited to varied climates, and bodies that could endure scarcity. Even you tonight are the product of this long interplay. Your blood, rich in hemoglobin, carries oxygen more efficiently because your ancestors lived through times when air was less forgiving. So the atmosphere is not only a sky above you, it is a silent partner in evolution, choosing winners and losers with every breath. It gave wings to insects, length to dinosaurs' necks, and resilience to mammals hiding in burrows, and it still shapes you now. The question lingers: if the atmosphere changes again, as it surely will, what forms of life will it sculpt next? You can almost picture the air itself as a trickster, setting invisible challenges for every creature to overcome. When oxygen rose high, it whispered, "Grow larger, take flight, stretch your lungs to the limit." When it dipped low, it warned, "Shrink, conserve, retreat underground if you must." The atmosphere rewarded those who could listen, and punished those who could not adapt. Even in human history, the atmosphere played its subtle part. When our ancestors first ventured onto high plateaus, thin air tested them. Those who endured passed down stronger lungs, richer blood, bodies tuned to altitude. Even now, mountaineers carry within them echoes of that inheritance, and as you breathe tonight, remember, you're part of that same game. If the air thickens with greenhouse gases, your descendants may live on a warmer Earth, where resilience once again becomes the currency of survival. If it thins, only those who adapt quickly will carry the story forward. The atmosphere is not passive. It is a sculptor, a judge, and a teacher. Think of fire. Oxygen in abundance feeds flame. Forests once burned with a ferocity unimaginable today, their flames stretching higher than the canopy, sustained by a richer sky. Entire landscapes were reset by atmospheric chemistry, each fire clearing the slate for new life. Without that cycle, the diversity of today's world might never have taken root. And think of ice. In glacial times, as carbon dioxide fell, vast sheets of frozen air, locked water and gases, reshaped continents. Cold winds sharpened survival, pressing wool on mammoths and feathers on birds. Every molecule drifting in the air had its role in evolution's script. So tonight, as you lie here, let yourself feel the weight of a single breath. It carries not only oxygen but history, decisions made by ancient forests, by long-dead plankton, by volcanoes and comets and cycles of ice. You are breathing not just for yourself, but with the Earth's memory. And quietly you might wonder, when the atmosphere shifts again, and it will, what beings will breathe it in, and what forms will rise from its invisible hand? When humans finally stepped into the story of Earth, the atmosphere was not just the air they breathed, it was a voice, a spirit, a god. Ancient civilizations lived at the mercy of skies they could not control, and so they gave those skies names, faces, and tempers. The Egyptians praised the breath of Ra carried by the desert winds. The Greeks imagined Zeus hurling lightning from above. In India, monsoons became both the curse and the gift of the gods. You can almost picture it. Early farmers standing beneath a sky heavy with clouds, their entire year balanced on whether rain would fall. Too little, and famine gnawed. Too much, and floods swallowed their work. Civilizations rose and fell not only on politics or war, but on the shifting moods of the atmosphere. The Mayans endured drought so long that their great cities withered. In Mesopotamia, floods carved legends into clay tablets. Even in China, entire dynasties were justified or overthrown on the idea of the mandate of heaven, an atmospheric verdict delivered through drought, storm, or clear skies. As humans learned to read the skies, they turned the atmosphere into a calendar. The cycle of winds and rains guided harvests, migrations, and festivals. Stone monuments like Stonehenge or the pyramids were not only tombs or temples, they were aligned with the heavens, markers of solstices, reminders of how closely survival was tied to what the air and sun would allow. But the atmosphere was also feared. Lightning splitting a dark sky, thunder rolling across valleys, hail flattening crops. These were not just weather events, they were messages. Even today, remnants of that awe remain when we watch a storm roll in or feel a sudden wind shift. For most of history, the atmosphere was not background. It was an unpredictable sovereign, ruling with invisible hands, and yet humans adapted. They built irrigation channels, water storage, windmills, and ships that rode the breath of the earth itself. The atmosphere was not only a danger, but also a power to be harnessed. Sails carried explorers across oceans, trade winds stitched continents together, and monsoons determined the rhythm of empires. It is humbling to remember that every empire, from the Nile to the Andes, depended on the thin film of gases above them. The balance of storms and seasons shaped what they ate, how they worshipped, where they settled, and how long they endured. So as you drift tonight, think of the air as not just chemistry, but story. It has been scripture, weapon, messenger, and ally. And in every age, civilizations looked upward, not only to the stars but to the sky itself, asking what tomorrow's air would bring. From the moment humans set sails upon the seas, the atmosphere transformed from mysterious overseer into silent partner. The wind, once feared, became the very breath that carried ships across oceans. Traders in the Indian Ocean learned to ride the monsoons, timing their journeys with uncanny precision. Spanish galleons leaned on the trade winds, carrying silver and spices across the Atlantic, and explorers, gazing at billowing canvas overhead, knew that every discovery, every island, every continent, was carved by the rhythm of air itself. The atmosphere was no longer just weather, it became infrastructure. Invisible highways of wind dictated where ports rose, where nations thrived, and where wars were fought. Without jet streams or satellites, sailors read the skies by instinct, watching the tilt of a gull, the pattern of clouds, the sudden stillness before a storm. And then came the industrial age. Humanity, for the first time, began to write into the atmosphere itself. Coal smoke poured upward, blackening skylines and seeding new clouds. The same winds that once filled sails now carried soot across continents. At first, this was seen as progress. Chimneys were the proud symbols of prosperity. But gradually, the realization grew. The atmosphere was not infinite. What went up did not simply vanish. The balance that had held steady for millions of years began to bend. Carbon dioxide, once a minor note in the air's composition, became louder. Cities choked with smog. Forests absorbed toxins. The very breath of the planet was shifting, and humanity, knowingly or not, had taken the pen. It is easy to forget how recent this moment is. For thousands of generations, the atmosphere shaped us. Only in the last few centuries have we begun to shape it in return. The winds that once carried ships now carry the fingerprints of industry, and the sky that once dictated harvests and migrations now carries the echoes of our choices, whispering them back as storms, droughts, and floods. Yet still, the atmosphere remains our companion. Its currents guide airplanes across oceans in hours instead of months. Its whispers of pressure and temperature tell us when storms are coming, and its thin, fragile veil continues to cradle every breath you take, even as it bears the weight of humanity's imprint. So as you lie still tonight, picture the winds not as random gusts but as threads in a vast tapestry. For millennia, they have stitched continents together, carried voices across seas, and now they carry our legacy as well. The atmosphere remembers everything, and in its memory lies the story of how we became not only children of the sky, but its caretakers too. Hey guys, tonight we're stepping into the modern chapter of Earth's breathing story, the moment when humans finally learned to read the atmosphere with precision. For most of history, weather was mystery. Farmers looked to the horizon, sailors studied the colour of dawn, shepherds sniffed the air before storms. But it was all intuition, educated guesses, folklore, and luck. The sky remained a cryptic book, its pages written in shifting clouds and invisible winds. Then came science. In the 19th century, people began stringing together observations across continents. Telegraph lines carried storm warnings faster than the storm itself. For the first time, villages could be warned of gales and fishermen told when not to sail. The atmosphere, once an unpredictable force, started to reveal its patterns. Fast forward a century, and humankind reached a breathtaking milestone: satellites. Tiny eyes in orbit looking down, scanning cloud tops, tracking hurricanes, mapping jet streams. For the first time, we could see the entire swirling atmosphere at once, a living, breathing system stretching across the globe. Weather was no longer just local, it became planetary. Think about that. When you open your weather app and see tomorrow's rain chances, you are seeing centuries of progress. Ships lost at sea, data logged by hand, equations scribbled by meteorologists, satellites circling above. Behind that simple forecast is the story of humanity cracking open the code of the skies. But in the 20th century, as our gaze grew sharper, something unsettling appeared in the data. The air itself was changing. Not its winds, not its storms, but its chemistry. Carbon dioxide, once a quiet background gas, was rising. Temperatures followed. Ice sheets began to retreat. The message was clear. The atmosphere was no longer simply shaping humanity. We were shaping it. This realization changed everything. Suddenly the air around us wasn't just weather. It was a record of industry, of cars, of burning forests. Each puff of smoke, each factory chimney, each jet contrail was like writing into the very lungs of the planet. Scientists began to speak of feedback loops, tipping points, warming seas, and yet, even as anxiety grew, so did wonder. Because those same satellites that revealed danger also gave us beauty. Global time lapses of clouds dancing across oceans, auroras shimmering at the poles, delicate veils of atmosphere glowing at sunrise when viewed from space. Our sky had become both fragile and majestic, vulnerable yet wondrous. So tonight, as you listen, imagine the view from orbit. Earth's thin blue halo shimmering against the blackness of space. A veil so delicate you could pinch it between your fingers, and yet so vast it holds the destiny of every breath you'll ever take. So let's drift deeper, friends. The age of satellites didn't just give us weather maps, it handed us evidence of something far more profound. High above Earth, instruments began measuring the glow of infrared radiation escaping into space. What they found was disturbing. The energy leaving our planet no longer matched the energy coming in from the sun. It was as if the Earth had pulled a blanket over itself. The atmosphere was trapping heat. At first, this was theory, the greenhouse effect that scientists had sketched out in dusty notebooks in the 19th century. But by the late 20th century it became undeniable. The graphs bent upward, carbon dioxide, methane, nitrous oxide, all climbing. The planet's fever was real. From orbit, time-lapse sequences revealed shrinking glaciers, retreating sea ice, forests browning in places that once were lush. Satellites watched hurricanes swell bigger, slower, hungrier. Fires raged so fiercely their smoke plumes wrapped around the entire globe. The air that once seemed infinite, eternal, was now seen as fragile, finite, and marked by human fingerprints. And yet, there is a strange beauty in these revelations. To watch the atmosphere from space is to see a living organism. Jet streams coil like serpents. Thunderheads bloom like cosmic mushrooms. The aurora ripples green and violet across the poles, curtains of light woven by solar winds. These images remind us, this thin veil of gases is not only our shield, it is our planet's soul. The paradox of our era is that we understand the atmosphere better than ever, and yet it has never been more vulnerable. Our knowledge has given us power, but also responsibility. For the first time in 4.5 billion years, a single species holds sway over the chemistry of the sky. And so, the story of the atmosphere enters its most uncertain chapter. A chapter where technology allows us to glimpse the future. Hotter summers, fiercer storms, rising seas, but where choice, not chance, will decide how that story unfolds. As you rest tonight, imagine yourself floating in orbit, gazing down at the Earth. The clouds swirl below like brushstrokes on a vast blue canvas. The atmosphere glows faintly at the edge of the planet, fragile and shimmering. It whispers to you, I am your past, your present, and your future. Guard me well. So here's where the story grows even stranger, my friend. You've travelled with me through the atmosphere's poisonous youth, through its transformation by tiny microbes, through its blue-skied golden age, and now into our fragile modern chapter. But what comes next? What kind of skies will crown the Earth long after we're gone? To answer that, you must learn to think in two different clocks. One runs fast, ticking in centuries, the scale of human impact, climate change, shifting ecosystems. The other moves achingly slow, its hands sweeping across millions or even billions of years, the scale of tectonic drift, orbital wobbles, and the evolution of the sun itself. Both clocks are already turning. On the short scale, just a few centuries from now, the atmosphere could look very different depending on our choices. If we burn fossil fuels until the last lump of coal is ash, the carbon dioxide could soar far above levels seen in millions of years. That would trap heat, melt ice, and shift the balance of gases. Imagine an Earth where summers are endless, and coastlines vanish beneath rising seas. It wouldn't be Venus, at least not yet, but it would be a harsher, stormier, less forgiving home. But if we pull back, if we find ways to draw carbon back down, restore forests, and let the oceans breathe, then maybe the sky will remain stable enough to cradle our descendants for millennia. The atmosphere, after all, has always been resilient. It has bent but not broken. On the slower clock, the predictions are more absolute. Earth's orbit shifts ever so slightly with each passing millennium. These subtle wobbles, called Milankovitch cycles, have plunged us into ice ages and carried us back out again. In another 30,000 years or so, if humans are still watching, they might see glaciers once more advancing, seas retreating, winters deepening. The cycle has not stopped. The skies still answer to celestial rhythms. But push even further forward, hundreds of millions of years, and the skies darken with a deeper fate. The continents will drift again, perhaps reuniting into a new supercontinent. With so much land gathered together, rain will vanish from the dry interiors, deserts will spread, and carbon dioxide levels may fall. Without enough CO2, plants struggle. Without plants, oxygen thins. And without oxygen, animals vanish. The atmosphere could return to something eerily closer to its ancient self. Thinner, stranger, almost alien. And beyond even that horizon, the slow swelling of the sun waits. 1 billion years from now, the star that feeds us will burn hotter, brighter. Oceans will boil, water vapor will load the skies, turning them into a greenhouse far deadlier than anything we can imagine today. Eventually, hydrogen escapes into space. The atmosphere itself begins to unravel, molecule by molecule. It is a chilling thought, isn't it? That the very air you breathe right now is temporary, that even this sky, which seems eternal, will one day vanish. And yet, doesn't that make it more precious? So let's walk forward, all the way to the edge of time. You've seen the atmosphere bloom from poison to breath, from blue skies to storms of fire. But now we must face its ultimate fate. 1 billion years from now, the sun grows hungrier. Its core fuses faster, pushing out more light and heat. Oceans vanish, boiled away until only salt-crusted basins remain. The skies fill with thick, wet vapor, a greenhouse beyond survival. Eventually, even that vapor splits apart. The hydrogen flees into space. The oxygen reacts and disappears. What was once breathable air becomes a chemical husk. Earth is no longer a world of clouds and weather. Its skies dim, stripped of water, stripped of life. What remains is thin, unstable, an echo of what once wrapped the forests, the whales, the birds. The last survivors, extremophile microbes, fade into the salt. The atmosphere that cradled life for billions of years finally betrays it. Fast forward even further, 6 billion years. The sun itself begins to transform into a red giant. Its surface balloons outward, swallowing Mercury, then Venus. The skies of Earth, if you could still call them skies, glow blood red with the expanding star filling half the heavens. Heat liquefies the surface. Mountains flow like wax. Oceans of molten rock churn beneath a thin wisp of atmosphere. Then nothing. The air is gone, and then silence. 7.5 billion years from now. The swollen sun stretches outward one last time, and Earth is caught in its fiery embrace. The planet vaporizes, dust to dust. The sky itself ceases to exist. It's a terrifying vision, but also strangely comforting. For the gases that once filled your lungs, the atoms of oxygen and nitrogen, carbon and hydrogen, they don't vanish. They join the sun's winds, flung back into the galaxy. They seed new stars, new planets. Perhaps in some distant corner of space another world will breathe, another sky will be born. So when you step outside tomorrow and look up, remember this. The air you breathe is temporary, fragile, borrowed from deep time. And because it will one day be gone, that makes every breath infinitely precious. Tonight we shift our gaze outward. For so long we've followed the fragile rise and fall of Earth's own atmosphere. But what happens when we look beyond our planet? What can the history of our skies teach us about the skies of other worlds? Astronomers today are searching far across the galaxy, scanning stars for the faint dimming of exoplanets passing in front of them. With every wobble, every shadow, they're not just looking for rocky spheres, they're looking for air. The signature of gases in distant atmospheres leaves a fingerprint in starlight, telling us if methane, oxygen, carbon dioxide, or water vapor is there. Why is this important? Because if Earth's history has shown us anything, it's that atmosphere is destiny. A planet's air determines its climate, its chemistry, its potential for life. Without oxygen, no forests, no animals, no us. Without a protective ozone layer, no shield against ultraviolet fire. Without greenhouse gases, a frozen ball. With too much of them, a runaway furnace. We've learned this the hard way on Venus and Mars. Venus once may have had oceans, but its atmosphere spiraled into a runaway greenhouse. Now its surface is hot enough to melt lead, with clouds of sulfuric acid. Mars, by contrast, lost its thick air to space. Its magnetic shield weakened, solar winds stripped its atmosphere, and the once flowing rivers froze or vanished. Both are cautionary tales written across our sky. And here's the most haunting thought. When scientists find an exoplanet with an atmosphere out there in the cosmos, it might be a snapshot of Earth's past or Earth's future. A young world with methane haze could be a mirror of our own planet before oxygen. A parched, overheated one could be our distant fate. So when we peer outward, we're not just exploring space, we're exploring time, other worlds as test cases for what Earth has already lived through and what still lies ahead. And so, you drift further into this thought. If Earth's atmosphere is a story of chance, of survival through poisoned skies and fiery cataclysms, then perhaps other worlds are writing their own versions right now. Astronomers call it the hunt for biosignatures, a whiff of methane that can't be explained by volcanoes, a faint shimmer of oxygen balanced with carbon dioxide, too stable to exist without something constantly renewing it. To find those traces would be to find breath itself, the exhalation of alien life carried across light years. But what if we never find it? What if we are the anomaly? The strange survivors who slipped through all 5 extinctions, who learned to breathe on a planet that transformed itself from poison into promise. Could it be that the long silence we hear in the stars isn't emptiness but testimony? How rare breathable air truly is. Still, hope lingers. Every telescope launched, every data stream combed through, brings us closer. The James Webb Space Telescope has already peered at exoplanets' skies, detecting water vapor, carbon dioxide, even hazes. Imagine the moment, somewhere in the quiet night ahead, when the signal spikes and the print of oxygen or methane aligns just right. It may not mean intelligent civilizations, not yet, but it would mean life, and that would rewrite the loneliness of our skies forever. In the end, Earth's own atmosphere is not just history, it's a blueprint. It tells us what to look for and what to cherish. It shows us that gases can transform rock into gardens, oceans into nurseries, deserts into habitats. That story is imprinted in every exoplanet search, in every starlight spectrum. So tonight, as you close your eyes, imagine yourself not just under Earth's sky, but under countless skies. Some are shrouded in toxic clouds, others frozen in ice, some burn with sulfur, some glow with water vapor, and maybe, just maybe, somewhere out there, a breath is being taken, soft and ordinary, beneath another sky. Sleep well in that thought, for the air you breathe now connects you not just to Earth's long past, but to the hope of company in the universe's endless night. Hey guys, tonight we arrive at the closing stretch of this journey, the soft landing after a vast arc through time and sky. You've followed the atmosphere's long tail from its poisonous beginnings through fire, ice, and breath. And now, it's time to let the story fade into something quieter. Imagine, for a moment, that you're standing on a ridge in the evening. The last sunlight paints the horizon in hues of copper and lavender. Above you, the sky looks empty, but it's not. It's filled with molecules, invisible threads keeping you alive, stitching together every inhale and exhale. That's the air's quiet gift. It doesn't need to be seen to hold you. For billions of years, the air has changed faces, swapping masks of methane, carbon dioxide, nitrogen, and oxygen. Each shift brought extinctions, but also renewals. Each silence, whether the Great Oxygen Catastrophe, or the choking greenhouse ages, or the deep icehouse freezes, was followed by resilience. Life bent, life broke, but it always found a way to return. And here you are, breathing the reward of all those struggles. It makes you wonder, doesn't it? If Earth's atmosphere has survived so much, could it endure what we throw at it now? Rising carbon, shrinking forests, warming seas. These are not volcanic eruptions or asteroid strikes. These are human fingerprints. But the lesson of the sky is not despair. It is responsibility. The air forgives, to a point, and if we allow it, the sky can heal. Still, the atmosphere is finite. It can't stretch forever. So when you breathe tonight, take it as a kind of vow, that each breath is a reminder that you belong to this story, that the air you carry is not just yours, it is the inheritance of everything that survived before you and the gift you'll pass on after you. Now, let your shoulders loosen. The journey has been long, stretching across eons, but here, at the quiet edge of the story, it's time to rest. Picture the Earth as it is tonight, Not in the distant past, not in the fiery future, but right now. Oceans breathing under the moonlight, forests whispering in the dark, winds carrying cool night air across mountains and plains. For all its scars, the planet still hums with life, still green, still blue, still generous. Close your eyes and imagine the atmosphere like a soft blanket wrapped around the Earth, thin but unbroken, holding warmth, letting in just enough light, keeping the silence from being absolute. You are inside that blanket. You have always been inside it, carried by the same air that once flowed through ancient ferns, through trilobites, through dinosaurs, through the first humans. That lineage now rests in you, each breath connecting you to an unbroken chain of survival. The Earth still breathes, and as long as it breathes, so do you. So tonight, let that truth be enough. Each inhale, a reminder that you are alive in this vast, improbable story. Each exhale, a gentle release into stillness. Thank you for spending this evening with Moontide Stories. Sleep well, rest deeply, and may tomorrow greet you with peace. Good night.